Believe it or not, we are about midway through the 2025 NFL season, and while no team has been officially eliminated, we know which teams will be competing for playoff spots and which teams in a lot of ways are looking forward to the 2026 NFL Draft. But there are also a handful of teams that, while they may not be competing for a Super Bowl, there are a lot of uncertainties around their future and what they will do after the 2025 season. And in today's video, we're going to break down the biggest questions for the remainder of the 2025 NFL season. Now, for clarity, we are not going to ask a low-hanging fruit question of something like, can the Buffalo Bills finally beat the Chiefs in the playoffs? No. These are going to be questions pertaining to the long-term plan of each franchise in today's video and how we got here to begin with. We're also going to break down some of the moves they made this past offseason and take a look into the future as well to discuss what each team could do this offseason if things don't work out. And there's a lot to break down in today's video, and with that preface out of the way, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing the Atlanta Falcons and asking the question, what is their long-term plan? The Falcons have had a very up and down year in 2025, as some of their ups include wins over the Vikings, Commanders, and Bills, and more specifically within the Bills game, making Josh Allen look really human in the process. He was under pressure all night, and Bijan Robinson had one of the best games of his career, and Atlanta beat Buffalo by double digits. And truly a credit where it's due, Atlanta's passing defense all year has been a no-fly zone. They're first in both passing attempts against and passing yards allowed, and they're 8th in EPA per passing play defensively. But the big question I have for this team is, offensively, what is the plan? And there's a lot of frustration in Atlanta at the moment as they lost to the Dolphins with a score of 34-10 in Week 8, but that doesn't have anything to do with the problems this team has had offensively for the majority of the year. Now, one thing I do want to clarify is, I don't think this is a Michael Penix exclusive thing, or a Zach Robinson exclusive thing, or anybody in particular. I would argue it's more Zach Robinson than anything, and that Penix is more of a victim of play calling because the flashes at times from Penix have been there. Not 100% of the time, but they've been there. He's also had some very bad moments, and we broke them down earlier in the year about just how bad the interceptions he had against Carolina were, but he's not in a great situation by any means either, at least from a play calling standpoint. And there's two sequences I want to highlight over the past few weeks to demonstrate what I'm talking about. The first is within the 49ers game where Atlanta was down 3 points with 9 minutes to play. They had 3rd and 1 because of a 7-yard passing play to Bijan Robinson on 2nd and 8. I wasn't a huge fan of the swing route or the screen route to Bijan on 2nd and 8, but Bijan did Bijan things on the 2nd and 8 play and made something out of nothing. On 3rd and 1, they ran a pitch play to Bijan out of pistol, and he didn't get it. And with the 4th and 1 play, they took one of the best running backs in the NFL out of the game to bring in Tyler Algier and run a passing play out of shotgun. And the ball placement wasn't great from Penix on this play to Drake London, but I can never get behind the shotgun on 4th and 1 or the pistol when you have 3 feet to go and also taking an elite player out of the game either. Now, the next week against Miami, one of the few good plays Atlanta had all day was a misdirection play action to Kyle Pitts for a gain of 24 yards from under center. The Falcons have ran a lot of pistol with Michael Penix this year, and it's been frustrating at times, but this play action with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, which was one of the few great play calls all day, shows how valuable under center play action can be. And my question is, why are we not seeing this with Michael Penix? Why are we not allowing Michael Penix to take more chances downfield? There's a stat from Next Gen Stats called aggressiveness, and it's based on the percentage of times quarterbacks are, well, aggressive. And Michael Penix is the 4th least aggressive quarterback in the NFL, as he has an aggressiveness percent of just 11.3. That's not to say Penix is timid or afraid of taking shots, but there's so many times where the offense limits what he can do, or even give him a chance to try. And it's not a coincidence Kyle Pitts is averaging just 8.8 yards per reception. And it's because the Falcons' offense is a lot of wide zone run out of pistol or short targets with a quarterback who looks the same as he did last year because the coaches choose to limit what he can do. And we're midway through year 2 with Michael Penix, and I have absolutely zero confidence in Zach Robinson's offense moving forward, and I know Falcons fans feel the same way. And the biggest question here before the year end is, what is their plan and how are they going to attack it moving forward? And before we continue, I want to talk to you guys about today's sponsor, Walter Picks. Walter Picks is an all-in-one mobile platform for fantasy and betting insights, and with Walter Picks, you can uncover high-value props, smarter game bets, and DFS lineups that you can optimize in seconds. And if you like fantasy football, because I know I do, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do too, you can sync your ESPN, Yahoo, or Sleeper Leagues to Walter Picks to draft smarter, set better lineups, and never miss a waiver wire gem. And why I like Walter Picks is you get both your fantasy and betting insights all in one place. So if I'm heading into a week and want to place a player prop, maybe specifically against the Cowboys or Ravens or even Vikings at this point's defense, I can head to Walter Picks and see where the best value for my dollar is, and Walter Picks helps with that, and that is by far my favorite part about the Walter Picks app. I love Walter Picks, and I think there's a lot of value by having both betting and fantasy insights all in one place. And right now, you can download the Walter Picks app and get a 7-day free trial by using either the link in the description or the QR code on screen. Once again, that's a 7-day free trial when you download Walter Picks using the QR code or the link in the description. And a big thank you to Walter Picks for sponsoring today's video. The next question we have goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's not one that just applies to the remainder of the 2025 regular season, but it also applies to the 2026 offseason, and that question is, what is their plan? Now, when you look at the 4 Steelers wins this year, they put up 34 points against the Jets in the season opener. I don't want to take away and say it was just the Jets. They still put up 34 points against an NFL team. That is a good team win. Now, if you want to push back on the 32 points they allowed, you can do that, but I'm only focusing on the positives here because there is a lot to criticize that we'll get to, so we're going to focus on the positives for that specific win. But for the other 3 wins, I think there are things to discuss. Within the win against the Patriots, they forced 5 turnovers, and you do have to credit the Steelers defense for forcing 5 turnovers and putting themselves in a position to be able to do that, but obviously it's also fair to say in the same breath that creating 5 turnovers is not a sustainable way of winning. And then you look at the win against the Vikings, TJ Watt made one hell of a play within that game. He intercepted a pass and put the Steelers in a good situation field advantage wise, and they went down and scored a touchdown, and that in a lot of ways was the deciding play. And their other win was against the Browns, and Dylan Gabriel in his second career start in a game where Dylan Gabriel threw the ball over 50 times, and yeah, the Steelers beat the Browns, and we'll just kind of leave it at that. But when you look at some of their losses, and especially the most recent losses, whether it was to the Joe Flacco-led Bengals or the Packers on Sunday night in a game where Jordan Love threw for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns, you have to wonder what the plan is for a team that has the highest paid defense in all of football. And the question is, okay, now that we have the highest paid defense in all of football, how are we going to get better for a unit that has looked not okay, not a little below average, but really, really bad over the past couple of games? And obviously the defensive woes have been really frustrating this year, but when they have not forced 5 turnovers in a game against the Patriots or faced Carson Wentz or faced Dylan Gabriel, the Steelers have allowed 30 or more points in every game this year. Now, Steelers fans, I do at least want to be fair within this. The 31 points they allowed against the Seahawks, I would acknowledge that that's not a true 31 points, obviously, because of the Caleb Johnson kick situation, and that wasn't a true 31 points against the defense. But even without that, does a single game taking away a touchdown really make you feel any better about how this team has played over the past couple of weeks? And to me, the answer would be no. And there's also a couple of uncomfortable conversations that I think need to be had, and one starts with TJ Watt, a player they just gave a very large contract to. Now, I do want to preface this and say that I think TJ Watt is still a really solid player, but I do think Steelers fans would even acknowledge at this point that there's a part, maybe not even in the back of their minds, maybe it's more towards the front of their minds, that they are a little nervous with how this contract is going to age. And I really think TJ at this point is more of a splash player, and whenever he has the splash plays like we pointed to with the Carson Wentz interception against the Vikings earlier in the year, or even several plays that he made against the Browns, those splashes are there and they get everybody in Western Pennsylvania going. But there's times and there's parts of games where he is kind of a non-factor, and he is still a really good run defender. I don't want to take that part away from him, but there's parts where you think heading into 2026 about the TJ Watt contract and the DK Metcalf contract, and especially with what DK did during the Packers game last week where it was 3rd and 2, he commits a really dumb penalty, and now it's 3rd and 17. You're already down 10 points, and in a lot of ways that kills the drive, and really at that point, any chance you had at coming back and winning that game as they were down 29-19, you really start to question what is the plan with this team and what is the vision with the Steelers moving forward. And when you think of the Steelers' vision, you have to factor in that these guys are not young. TJ Watt will turn 32 next year, and I think that he's already starting to show some signs of regression. Now, it would not be fair to TJ Watt or to any pass rusher to expect them to have a 22-sack year the way TJ did a couple of years ago every single season for the rest of their career. But TJ has shown some signs of regression. I don't think he's the same player on a consistent basis that he was even a year or two ago. DK Metcalf will be 29, and now we can have the quarterback conversation. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers at 41 going on 42 is not going to be the long-term solution there, and Aaron Rodgers has kind of also said that he expects 2025 to be his final year, and the Steelers, as we know, are not going to go 3-14 or 4-13. They're not going to lose out, and in some ways, I do think that the never had a losing record thing from Tomlin is a little overrated because you're never selecting in the top 5 or top 7 or top 8 to really have a premium draft pick to be able to build your franchise the right way, and the Steelers have been more or less treading water for the past 6 years, and that goes back to the question that I have is, what is the long-term plan with this team? Next up is the Washington Commanders, and the biggest questions we have for them moving forward is what are they going to do after the 2025 season, and how are they going to get better? And the reason we ask this is because while their season is technically not over at 3-5, I do think in a lot of ways it is over, because what you have to remember is this was a team that entered the year with legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. You don't go to the NFC Championship game in your quarterback's rookie season and then say, you know what, we need to step back for a year and have a better roster for our quarterback's third season and kind of write off the quarterback's second season. Now, there are a few things that need to be addressed within the 2025 Commanders season, and Jaden Daniels for that matter too. Jaden Daniels has missed time this year, and whenever you have a quarterback go down, your season isn't altered. It's done 99.9% of the time, but he wasn't done for the year, and what also has to be addressed is the Commanders' defense is not good. They're 21st in points allowed per game, 27th in yards allowed, and 28th in turnovers forced, and they were even lower before they intercepted Patrick Mahomes twice on Monday Night Football in Week 8. And even in a game where they forced 2 turnovers against the Chiefs, it did not matter because they allowed over 430 yards of opposing offense, and they lost by 21 points. They've also lost 4 out of their last 5 games, and yes, they're going to win some games down the stretch, but they still have to play the Seahawks, Lions, Broncos, Cowboys, and the Eagles twice. And if the magic number to get into the postseason is 10 wins, well, I don't think they're going to get there. They're also 24th in defensive EPA per play, and not only has Jaden Daniels missed time this year, but Terry McLaurin has too, and whenever you're heading into games with Deebo Samuel, Luke McCaffrey, and Jalen Lane as 3 of your top receivers, it's not a great situation to be in. And during the 2025 Commanders team preview, we talked about how they played their best football at the right time last year, and truly credit where it's due. They forced 5 turnovers against the Lions in the divisional round of the playoffs, and they put up 45 points on the road. That should not be dismissed, and that should be viewed as probably the happiest moment this fan base has had in 25 or 30 years. But now that we're 10 months past that game, it's okay to acknowledge this team peaked at the right time last year, and the foundation of the roster and the defense is not great. And what's worse for Washington is you're going to have to replace a lot of these guys as early as this offseason. Von Miller obviously wasn't a long-term solution, and he is 36 years old, so you knew that was coming, but Bobby Wagner is 35, Jacob Martin is 30, and Marshawn Lattimore, outside of the Chiefs game, which, by the way, that was an insane interception, but outside of one play, has largely been disappointing. And when you look at the Washington defense, I think there's a lot more questions than answers, and that's already with limited draft capital in the 2026 draft, due in large part to the Laramie Tunsil trade. They currently have just 3 selections in the first 5 rounds, with just 2 in the top 100. You would like to think Washington would spend a first-round pick on a pass rusher because they need pass rush help, but there's also a point to be had of, hey, we have a great quarterback within the rookie window. Should we draft a receiver in the first round and not only pair somebody with Terry McLaurin, but also have a guy who would be the successor to Terry McLaurin, and within that, hopefully the receiver that would be Jaden's go-to guy for the next 5 to 6 years, if not longer. Jaden Daniels is obviously a very fun player to watch, and he had a tremendous rookie season, but I think there's times where far too much is asked of him, and I don't think the Commanders roster is all that good, and that's one of my biggest concerns for this team moving forward. The next question may surprise some people, but it applies to the 2024 number 1 overall pick, and it's Caleb Williams, who are you going to be for not just the remainder of the 2025 season, but who are you going to be as an NFL quarterback? Because there's no doubt in my mind that Caleb Williams has the talent to play at the NFL level for a long time. Whenever you watch Caleb Williams and you see him make some of the throws, whether it's from the arm angles, whether it's him extending a play and finding somebody 25 yards downfield, there is zero doubt that Caleb Williams has the talent to play at the NFL level. But the consistency within Caleb Williams' game is downright frustrating, and this is not a late round, first round pick or a developmental day two guy. This is a number one overall pick that you need more consistency from. And for reference, Caleb Williams had the best game of his career earlier in the season against the Cowboys. He threw for 298 yards and 4 touchdowns. It was awesome. It was a day that Chicagoans had been looking forward to since Caleb Williams was drafted. And when they hired Ben Johnson, that was exactly what they were envisioning. And it was a tough start to the year for the Bears as they dropped not one, but 2 straight division games. And in week 2, the Lions put up over 50 points against them. But week 3 looked to be where we were going to turn the page and Caleb Williams was going to be the number 1 overall pick that everyone expected him to be. But since he has not played great, in the 4 games since, he has just 2 passing touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And the 1 interception against the Raiders, that is what it is. Max Crosby is a Hall of Fame talent. He made a tremendous play, whatever. Those plays are going to happen. But the one against the Saints was on the sideline, and it was a ball that Caleb Williams could have put out further, and it was a ball that he kind of underthrew and allowed the corner to come back into the play. And the one most recently against the Ravens was not a good play because it was a concept that the Bears had ran a couple of times earlier in the game, and Nate Wiggins, having seen this play already a couple of times in the game, jumped the route, and it was also a kind of hospital ball. Now, we've had the conversation on the channel, and it was especially on Twitter earlier in the year, about how the hospital ball conversation was incredibly toxic, but Marlon Humphrey, had Rome Odunze caught this ball, was ready to unload and really lay his shoulder right into Rome Odunze, and it was going to be a car crash type collision. But why the interception against the Ravens in particular was frustrating, aside from the fact that it was in the 4th quarter and it was at a point in the game where the Bears were only down 3 points, was the fact that Kyle Monangai was wide open. And a lot of the time whenever we discuss quarterback play, it's about taking what's in front of you, and there's times where Caleb Williams kind of gets in the pocket and you can see him, he's kind of like for lack of better wording, he's kind of like a little kid that just drank a couple of Mountain Dews or a couple of Bang energy drinks, where he's really hyped up on caffeine and wants to make the big play or wants to go for a really highlight reel type throw, instead of taking a play in Kyle Monangai that was right in front of him that probably would have gained 7 or 8 yards and put the Bears in a much more advantageous situation. The big question for Caleb Williams for the remainder of the season is, which player are you going to be? Are you going to legitimately be the number 1 overall pick or worth the number 1 overall pick? Because there's no doubt in my mind, and there should be no doubt in anybody's mind, that Caleb Williams has the arm talent to play in the NFL for a very long time. It's about the consistency, and who he's going to be moving forward is something I'm very much looking forward to seeing. Now, I still want to acknowledge that we are only half a season in with Ben Johnson, and that there were some kinks in the armor to work out, but I am looking forward to finding out the answer to this question, hopefully by the end of the 2025 season. Now, generally, I don't bring up fantasy football on the channel, but one thing that I do think should be noted is over the past 4 games, since the Cowboys game, Caleb Williams is around quarterback 30 in terms of fantasy production, and I know fantasy value isn't exactly a great metric to provide in terms of true analysis of the game, but that shows who Caleb Williams has been for now a quarter of the season since they played the Cowboys. And as we know, the Cowboys defense this year has been, bad. So since that 298-yard 4 passing touchdown game, Caleb Williams has not been a league average quarterback. He hasn't been a slightly below league average quarterback. He's been kind of an underwhelming NFL quarterback. So where this is going to go for the rest of the season, I can't wait to find out. But to me, that is undoubtedly one of the biggest questions for the remainder of the 2025 NFL season. There are a couple of other questions that I have for the remainder of the 25 season. I did not want to make this a JJ McCarthy Minnesota Vikings video, but I think that question is very fair. Is JJ going to be the guy in Minnesota? Because if he plays very poorly over the course of the next 10 games, then fair or not, there will be conversations this offseason about whether or not he's the long-term answer. And then the Saints selected Tyler Shuck with the 40th overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. He is already 26 years old, so there's conversations about whether whether Shuck is going to be the guy for the remainder of the 25 season and then the future, and whether or not the Saints select a quarterback with presumably a top 10 selection in the 26th draft, maybe even a top 5 selection in the 26th draft. Then there's also questions about the Browns quarterback situation. Are they going to turn it over to Shedeur Sanders at some point? Because I don't think Dylan Gabriel is going to be the long-term solution there, and if and when they do turn it over to Shedeur, how much leash are they going to give him? Is he going to be the guy for not just a game or two, but for 6 or 7 games? And then if he shows anything, are you going to roll into the 2026 season with Shedeur? Now, there are a couple of other questions around quarterback situations, and Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. This will be one that's brought up routinely for the Colts for the rest of the season, because there are going to be people that are going to wait on Daniel Jones to have a bad game, because I'll be honest, I would be very surprised if the Colts finish the 2025 season with a 16-1 record. So if and when the Colts lose a game, if Daniel Jones throws 2 interceptions in that game, and they do play the Chiefs, so to make it even better for the haters out there, if Daniel Jones throws 2 interceptions against the Chiefs in a game the Colts lose, there will be people waiting on that saying, I told you so, I knew Daniel Jones was going to be a bust from the minute he was in New York, and never acknowledged the type of year that he's having. So with the Colts expected to play in not just one, but several big games down the stretch, and even in January, is he going to be the long-term solution in Indy? And then what type of contract would he receive long-term? And that concept very much also applies to Sam Darnold and the Seahawks, because there are going to be a lot of people that remember the Sam Darnold Week 18 in the wild card round game last year, and if Sam Darnold does not have a good game in whenever the season is on the line for Seattle this year, those same people are going to be waiting on Sam Darnold to have a bad game the way they currently are with Daniel Jones. I hope both players do well, and I hope each guy is the long-term solution for both the Seattle Seahawks and the Indianapolis Colts. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe, as we are closing in on 220,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you enough for the support. Thank you to Walter Picks for sponsoring today's video, and make sure to download the Walter Picks app, and when you do, you'll get a 7-day free trial using either the link in the description or the QR code on screen. And until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.